Coming up on today's edition of Locked On Eagles, it appears for the first time in a couple of years, the Eagles are back on top of the city of Philadelphia when it comes to the Big Four sports teams. Also want to get into Isaac Seumalo versus Jack Driscoll. Could Seumalo be on the roster bubble? Going to get into as well potential day 2 and day 3 starters from the 2020 NFL draft. Who has the best chance to start between K'Von Wallace, Davion Taylor, and Jack Driscoll? All of that and more coming up on today's edition of Locked On Eagles.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. We're your hosts, Louie and Gino Camilleri, going 4 years strong now, the most Italian Philadelphia Eagles podcast you're ever going to find out there, available Monday through Friday on all podcast platforms, on YouTube as well in video form. And make sure you hit us up on Twitter at Locked On Birds, at DiBiase LOE, and at GC24_football. You can find our written content as well on Fox 43. Gino, what's up, man? Another week of shows. It's June 1st. You know, OTAs are getting underway. Football season's coming before you know it.
There's football coming, but I got to say something real quick, Lou. The fact that in a hockey game last night, there were 14 goals scored between the Colorado Avalanche and the Edmonton Oilers.
And you're an Avalanche fan, and you were talking with me about Jalen Hurts while a 14-goal showing happened. And I think you missed like every goal, right? Because when you were watching
every goal besides the empty netter. But shout out to the guys at Locked On Avalanche.
Yeah,
they updated me on everything that happened during that game. I ended up watching it back after I watched
that series is going to be insane, man.
It
Probably
is.
10+ goals every game.
The great part about our network is, Lou, you could probably listen to every single one of your favorite core 4 sports teams within an hour and a half and then go about your day, or do it on your route to work, or do it while you're doing yard work like I do myself. And that's why I love this, is because every single day you're getting an update into what's happening in real time. Why people love shows that are reality television that happen almost in real time, like the behind the scenes of Hard Knocks. It's because you want to be in play with what's going on. And right now in hockey, right now in football, we're going to give you up to the date stuff. We're talking about June 1st, post-June 1st contracts and OTAs. Where else are you going to get this on a day-to-day basis? You're not.
Absolutely. And, you know, you mentioned the Big Four. You mentioned great hockey. You look at the Philadelphia Flyers and you watch the Oilers and the Avalanche. The product, it just doesn't even seem like the same sport. That's how I felt in 2020 watching the Philadelphia Eagles. And even last year at some point watching their passing game compared to Buffalo and Kansas City. And, you know, that made me think. And you're also looking at the Philadelphia Phillies and how they're like 10 games back already in the NL East. And I saw a stat today that's crazy. The Philadelphia Phillies have been around since like the 1800s. They're like a century-old franchise. They've only made the playoffs 14 times. Like, Philly sports right now is,
oh my goodness,
outside of the Eagles, it doesn't look great. The Sixers are a consistent playoff team but they always get stuck in the second round. Gino, I feel like the Eagles are kind of back on top of the Philadelphia sports world, and they really weren't the last couple years. I feel like it was the Sixers and the Phillies payroll so high. You thought they were eventually going to figure it out, but after the offseason the Eagles had and making the playoffs last year, and the way the Sixers feel like they're plateauing now, I don't think James Harden's going to get any better. I think the Eagles are back on top, man.
You can make the case, especially in the core 4, and then even outside of that in the National Lacrosse League. I mean, the Wings are out of it. They got eliminated a couple weeks ago in the even before the playoffs, I believe. And then you look at the Philadelphia Union, who they're not bad, but you look at the Eagles and stars in that city, you think of guys from each team. Shout out Matt Rambo on the Wings. People love him in Philadelphia. You look at guys around the Flyers, you're trying to figure out what's going on there.
Well, they refuse to ever rebuild. They're going to be this mediocrity, like stuck in that phase forever, it feels like.
And as a former Buffalo Sabres fan, now Colorado Avalanche fan, I know what mediocrity for a century feels like. And if you refuse to rebuild in this day and age in any sport, I think the Sixers are probably the closest to what the Eagles have done in terms of that full-on rebuild going from bare bones to the promised land. Sure. They still have to get over that hump. But you look at the star power. It's Joel Embiid. It's Tyrese Maxey, right? Then you turn around and look at the Eagles. For the first time in a couple seasons, even the Super Bowl year, Lou, I don't think they had that star power of those names.
Yeah, outside of Wentz, it was still Joel Embiid was the biggest athlete 100%. In the city. And then, you bring in Bryce Harper.
He probably still is.
Oh, no, he definitely is. And Bryce Harper is still up there. But the Eagles now are back in it when it comes to the star power, too. You're right. Like A.J. Brown is a top 10 wide receiver. I think Devontae Smith is going to be
a star
in that conversation this year. Jalen Hurts, if he takes that next step, if you're a quarterback in the city of Philadelphia that has success, you trump everybody for sure. And if you don't, you are public enemy number one. So yeah, I feel like they're definitely back on top. And the difference between them and the Sixers is the Eagles are still trending upwards, whereas the Sixers, it feels like, and I love how they've been going for it every year since they put things together after the process. They've been gunning for a title, and they've had a bunch of different big threes they've tried, and it didn't work with, it was supposed to be at first Ben Simmons, Markelle Fultz, and Joel Embiid, and then they flipped Fultz when that didn't work for Jimmy Butler. That didn't work, right? And then it's James Harden. But they use it feels like their last chip, right? All the Howie Roseman, all of the future assets he's had that he's been able to use to extend this window. The Sixers are more forward. They're more in the future with how far they've progressed, where Ben Simmons was that last big piece and they used it on James Harden. And I don't think the old James Harden's coming back. And I don't think they can use him to get another, to extend this window even longer. Whereas the Eagles right now, it seems like are doing that, where, the next 2 years, they have 2 first-round picks next year, 2 second-round picks the year later. It's more sustainable right now, even though they don't have their Joel Embiid. Again, I think the Eagles in 3 years are going to, even maybe 2 years, are going to be the best team in this city.
And there's something to be said about getting over that hump. And as someone who roots for Manchester City, who's never won a Champions League final, as somebody who rooted for the Colorado Avalanche the past couple of years, who struggled to get out of the second round until this year, it took them 4 years to get over that hump. The Sixers very well could get to that mark. But when you get to that point where a team like the Celtics shows up, they're a storied franchise that there's just something in that building that is different, and they just know how to get there. They still have to get there. With the Eagles, Lou, they have gotten to the promised land and held the trophy. Yeah. That next generation, like we said, doesn't want to hear about 2017 anymore. And in fact, I believe on paper, people, this team has a chance to have a better offensive output and a better defensive output. Talk about star power as well, Lou. You didn't even mention Darius Slay, who's one of the top 5 cornerbacks in the league. And
I think Nakobe Dean's going to be a star too, man. I really have a feeling he's going to be.
Jordan Davis will. Yeah. In Philly, Fletcher Cox is a star. Outside of there, he's a star as well. This team, they're doing it the right way, influxing young talent that's homegrown, holding on to it like guys like Lane Johnson, Fletcher Cox, signing younger guys like Jordan Mailata that within the city are well-known and are soon to be well-known in the NFL.
Well, and you got to remember too, you want star power, right? You need stars to win in every league. But you got to remember too, the Eagles' philosophy, how much they put into the offensive and defensive line. You compare like Jordan Mailata to a star in the NBA. Like, of course, the NBA star is always going to get more publicity. So even though Philly doesn't, like, Joel Embiid is the guy in the city, like you said, even in 2017, they didn't have a bunch of those star players, but it's also because of football is just, it's built different. And 100%. If you're building through the trenches and that's where your core is, that doesn't get the flashy headlines, right? It doesn't have the sex appeal of the NBA stars for sure. But, regardless, you look on paper this year, heading into their future, the potential, I think the Eagles right now, are back on top in this city when it comes to the big 4 in sports, the Flyers, the Phillies, the Sixers, and the Birds. Gino, and they continue to bolster that offensive line. I want to get into, though, with you coming up, Isaac Seumalo versus Jack Driscoll, because now that Landon Dickerson established himself as the guy at left guard, and they took Cam Jurgens in the second round. Seumalo's kind of in no man's land, and Jack Driscoll might be battling for that job. And you look at Seumalo's cap hit, and you're like, I don't know where this is going to go, and I want to get into it with you. But before that, I want to give a shout out to one of our sponsors of the show today, and that's Built Bar. We've been talking about Built Bar for years now, and they continue to change the game when it comes to protein bars. Now they're changing it even more. They're going with granola. Built delivered. Built granola bars are here. Granola bars come in 3 unbelievable flavors: chocolate peanut butter, chocolate coconut, and white chocolate berry. Want to try all 3 flavors? You can get a mixed box at Built.com right now. These are so different from the bars and the puffs. Built granola bars are loaded with granola. It's the perfect combination of crunch and chewiness. But just like bars and puffs, these babies are packed with protein and covered in 100% real chocolate with only 150 calories in every bar, 15 grams of protein, and only 4 grams of sugar. Built granola bars will change your world. Built has cracked the code to better granola. They're the perfect healthy snack to pack your lunch and take on the road or eat as an everyday snack. They're made with collagen protein as well, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. Head over to Built.com today. Check out all of their amazing products. You got puff bars, marshmallow protein bars, the normal Built bars covered in 100% chocolate. Now you've got granola bars. Use the promo code LOCK15. We'll save you some money on that next order. Use the promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. Built Bar, changing the game of protein bars. All right, Eagles fans, we thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. He's Gino Camilleri. I'm Lou DiBiase. We have an important favor to ask you as well. We've put together a survey so we can learn more about our listeners like you and make your favorite Locked On podcast even better. This is your opportunity to tell us what you like and don't like about Locked On Podcasts. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey right now to get started. It won't take very long, and everybody that completes the survey can qualify for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards to take your audience survey. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey. Thanks for your help. And yeah, man, go save some money when you.
Hey, we read the YouTube comments. Ticket. We read all the iTunes, every single comment that's out there. We know you guys have feedback for us, whether it's good or bad. Please go and do this. It's something that'll help us. It's something that'll help you in your first. Yeah,
go buy your ticket. The Monday night game against Washington is going to cost a lot. So go get some money from Ticketmaster.
In this day and age, on a ticket website, that'll cover the fees and then some for you. So absolutely, what a way to do it.
Yeah. Gino, we talked about in segment 1, the offensive line. We hinted at, this next topic, and you look at the right guard position. As we said, Landon Dickerson, he's the left guard. You took Cam Jurgens in the second round, so that pretty much shows your hand. Dickerson's not moving. Jurgens is supposed to be, everything goes right, and you don't have to move Dickerson inside. Jurgens is going to be Kelsey's replacement. And so Isaac Seumalo is here kind of as the forgotten man coming off a serious injury, last year at the beginning of the season that kept him out the entire season. And Jack Driscoll also, though, you look at, how well he played at right guard last year. Seumalo's switching positions. Driscoll, though, has had his own injury concerns, and you're like, who's going to be the starter? And then I saw Honest NFL today, who's definitely worked for the Eagles before. Still don't know who he is, but I think it's clear that he was someone that's credible and worked in the NFL. He talked today about the possibility of cutting Seumalo because of that $5 million cap hit. Gino, where is your head when it comes to the right guard position? Like, who do you think should start? Should Seumalo potentially be cut? I'm not sure if I'm comfortable with that after Herbig left, but it is really all up in the air right now at that position.
Let's tackle this in 2 parts. First, the reason why they have to address the right guard position is because Landon Dickerson solidified himself next to his best friend, Jordan Mailata, on that left side. I take this all the way back to when Jason Peters was recurringly on the injury list. And the one thing, maybe out of everything that Jason Peters added to this organization, that he allowed this team to see was that they were better off making the switch only at one position on the offensive line rather than 2. Because when they moved Lane Johnson from right tackle to left tackle and then had to put Big V in that spot on the right side and a whole mix of other guys that didn't go well, they saw how badly that went. So they're not going to move Landon Dickerson and move somebody else to left guard. Yes, Isaac was originally the left guard, but he hasn't played in a season. He has to get his feet back under him. So you're going to stick with the hot hand, stick with somebody who is a mauler on the inside, is still on a rookie deal. Then we go to the competition on the right side. Right now you have Jack Driscoll right now you have Isaac Seumalo. You probably have Sua Opeta in that conversation. And Cam Jurgens is, I'd put at like 10% that he could play right guard.
Yeah, I can't imagine they want to play him at guard.
No.
Yeah.
They don't want to have to go to option C and draft somebody else because option A was Landon. He goes to left guard. Option
you can't just keep doing that. Yeah.
It would be great if you had the resources to do so, but you got to invest in other higher profile positions, I would say. And you've put a lot of picks and resources with contract money into that offensive line. So going to the cap hit number, it's around $5 million.
Yeah.
This team on June 1st, today, opened up close to $5 million with Brandon Brooks coming off the books with that little bit of the restructure that they did, as well as Fletcher Cox and that nearly $3.5 million between his old contract and his new deal. So I look at that and say, okay, you could pay Isaac with that money, but also you could open up $5 million to potentially play somebody else. Do you believe in Jack Driscoll enough? Do you believe that Isaac could easily make that switch? That I don't know. Do you believe that Jeff Stoutland could develop somebody behind
which he's
Jack
proven
Driscoll?
He can pretty much do every time.
And so Sua Opeta, real quick before you go, Sua Opeta has been named by Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni in this offseason, talking about how important he was in that back half of the season. And Sirianni referenced one block that he said was on their teach tape. It was a combo block with Jordan Mailata, I believe. And I was scouting a player and I saw what he was talking about, and he just played his position perfectly. And that's a guy who's just an undrafted free agent that you bring in here and you could develop. So there's a lot of different avenues to go here. Ultimately, the one common denominator in all of these decisions is Jeff Stoutland. What does he believe is best? I'll take his opinion from here to kingdom come. He knows probably better than anybody in the NFL how to scout, how to develop, how to coach offensive line play. So take his word into account. If he believes Isaac could move from left guard to right guard, something that they fully believe that all of their players should be able to do with the versatility element to their game, then you probably give him a chance. And if not in camp, maybe a team loses somebody on the interior, you could potentially get an asset for him, or you just cut him and let Jack Driscoll play, which I think would probably be the last of the three options.
Yeah.
I don't think there's going to be a wrong option at the end of the day, though, because both of them are serviceable and good starters. Sorry, I rambled on a little.
Oh, you're good. No matter what they do, I'm going to have confidence in, because like you said, I think Jeff Stoutland's going to handle it. And I guess that's why you could make the argument that they should move on from Isaac Seumalo, which would save them $5.6 million now as a post-June 1st cut. And again, like you said, he's moving to another position. He's had a couple serious injuries now. Jack Driscoll played really well. Sua Opeta showed flashes. Stoutland gets the most out of players, especially at the guard position, like Herbig, Opeta, Driscoll. Seumalo's been a really good player for sure. Really kind of underrated since he took over for Wiz in 2018. So there's a lot of variables. I could see why you would move on, but I just don't want to make a strength now suddenly a weakness when it comes to your depth, because you've already, if you wouldn't have moved on from Nate Herbig and you wanted to save that money with Seumalo, I'd say, okay, yeah, absolutely. But I don't know, like moving on from both Nate Herbig and Isaac Seumalo, considering Driscoll's injury history, yeah, you have Opeta still, and Stoutland can get the most out of the reserves that you have. But I just really liked having all of that depth for sure. Obviously, you don't want to keep a guy on the books when you could save $6 million if he's not going to start. So maybe you give Seumalo a chance to win the job first, and then you see about moving on, because he's going to be a left guard, a starting left guard somewhere else if he gets moved.
Any day of the week.
But I guess it's a good situation to have. I just can't imagine the Eagles would want to lose two starting caliber guards in the span of 2 months with Herbig and Seumalo. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Again, moving to right guard is not going to be easy, but Gino, Seumalo, I think, has shown versatility. He's even played tackle a couple times throughout his career in Philly, and he's a good player. So I'm not just like instantly trying to push him out the door. You know, Driscoll is an option, but it's not like they have all pros at every spot, including right guard, where you want to move away, you know?
Super Bowl champion Isaac Seumalo, like, what are we talking about in regards to this when it comes to if he would start next to Jason Kelce.
Right. I don't think he'd struggle to move. Like,
no.
Honest NFL talked about it, saying he doesn't think he would transition to right guard that well. And I'm like, I don't know. I think he could do it. And he's a pretty good player. I don't think we're giving Seumalo enough credit here. And I think it would be neck and neck with him and Driscoll. Like, he was talking about how it would seem like almost Driscoll would blow him out of the water in that competition.
I don't necessarily believe that, because one thing that he did that Andre Dillard never did at Washington State was that at Oregon State, Isaac was all over the offensive line. Yes, it's been some time, but you know his willingness and his ability to go out there and play multiple positions. The key is the guy who's in the middle. Everybody's going to look good playing next to Jason Kelce. And Isaac Seumalo has played at, I would say, an above average level at his position. Arguably one of the most underrated guys in the league.
Right, he's been sandwiched in between Hall of Famers, you know, I mean, for the last 4 years.
And one of the best up-and-coming left tackles, and a right tackle who's just as great, and Brandon Brooks, who was there before. You're not going to fill in Brandon Brooks with either of these options.
No.
Can you get starting caliber play out of both of them? 100% in my mind, I believe you can. And I'm sure Isaac isn't a dumb kid and saw the writing on the wall when Landon came in, when Cam came in. I believe he'd probably be working on it by now. He's not just going to go into OTAs and they're going to say, oh, here, go play right guard.
And I know Andre Dillard struggled at right tackle, but the Eagles have shown how many different offensive linemen have played multiple spots. Jordan Mailata has gone from left tackle to right tackle. Halapoulivaati Vaitai back in the day played both tackle positions. I think he played guard even once. I mean, Stoutland, if anybody's going to get a veteran like Seumalo ready, it's Jeff Stoutland. So if you're going to doubt a transition, yeah, that's the thing too. I think they're big fans of Seumalo, and so I don't think they're going to push him out the door just to save this cap hit.
No, I think the best avenue is go into camp, see how it plays out. If a team comes calling and they offer up for a starting caliber offensive lineman, a 4th or 3rd round pick, which, let's say a team like Cincinnati loses somebody on the interior and they're like, okay, we can make a run again. Would they be willing to give up a high pick to get somebody that they have seen hoist a Lombardi trophy at that position? I think a team would go out and do that. Go into camp, let them compete. If the deal is too good to be not made, go and make it. If not, you walk into the season with unbelievable depth on the interior, once again, 2 above average starters at the right guard position that have played in this offensive scheme. They can play multiple positions. Isaac's not the only guy that can play left guard and left guard only. Every other guy on that line has had to move around, except Jason Kelce, of course.
Seumalo was a center before. He was a center in college, so he's already proven that he can play multiple positions. And like I said earlier, he's played tackle. So it's different than the Andre Dillard situation, where if you can get a good deal, you should definitely take it. And that would hurt your tackle depth for sure. But it's different where there's no path for Dillard to start here anymore. Whereas Seumalo, like you said, he can be great depth. And there's also still a window where he becomes your high quality starting right guard. If he's your 5th starter on the offensive line, it's a great situation to be in. So it's going to be
guard and tackle are very different when it comes to working in one tight areas when you're on the interior, and on the exterior, it's all about working in space. Isaac Seumalo, we know what he can do against the run. He would only probably be having to change his pass sets up more than anything. And I believe his physicality and his nimbleness on his feet will allow him to go and compete at that right guard position. I wouldn't say Driscoll would blow him out of the water. I think it would be a fair competition, and one that's way better than Chance Warmack and Stefan Wisniewski was a couple years ago. Let's get rid of that. This would be a way better rotation if you did go that avenue, which they should never do that again. At the end of the day, Jeff Stoutland rises all tides, lifts all boats. He's the guy on the interior that's going to make it run. As well as a potential Hall of Famer, Jason Kelce, Lane Johnson, 2 of the youngest and best offensive linemen in football, in Jordan Mailata and Landon Dickerson. That 5th guy, it's like going into Golden State. It's like playing with Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green. Just play your role and you won't have to be heard about.
That's why I'm not concerned.
What that position has to do.
It's why I'm not concerned, really, because, again, if they do decide to move on from Seumalo, I know that Stoutland's got this. And, again, it's your fifth starting spot here. You have stars at every other position on the offensive line. So even if Seumalo moves on, like, they're going to be okay. Even if Driscoll got hurt, like if Opeta has to start or anybody else, like, the only, like, disastrous offensive lineman the Eagles have had in the last, like, 4 or 5 years I can think of is like 2020. You remember Jerome Brown? I think his name was Jamon Brown. I can't remember that guy's name. He was so bad against the Baltimore Ravens. Like he sacked Wentz himself. And then he took a selfie with Lamar Jackson after the game. He was the only bad one. The Eagles have always had, a great situation at the offensive line. So whatever they do with Seumalo and Driscoll, I'm on board. I would prefer though to, at least right now, until we see what happens with that starting battle in camp, keep him in-house, especially after moving off Nate Herbig. Gino, I want to get into, to wrap up the show with you, we talked about Driscoll here, right? A 4th-round pick in 2020. Another great pick, by the way, of Howie Roseman late in an NFL draft. This team just nails it on day 3. And I was thinking about this battle, and it got me thinking about that draft class. Of course, Jalen Reagor and Jalen Hurts leading it off. But then you think about Davion Taylor in the 3rd round. You think about K'Von Wallace in the 4th round, Driscoll as well in round 4. It gets you thinking, like, they're all kind of in a similar boat, right? Where they've shown flashes. Driscoll way more than the others, but Taylor showed flashes too. And Wallace showed a lot at Clemson. He was versatile, and he hasn't really gotten the opportunity to show anything on the field this year. When it comes to those three, I think Driscoll's probably the clear favorite to start, right? But then between Taylor and Wallace, which guy do you think has the better path to have a big role on this football team in 2022?
Both at a position that they've had meaningful snaps. They've played a large role in Jonathan Gannon's scheme when healthy, which is the key word. And you got to be reliable and be able to sit on the field.
All three have had injury issues.
All three of them. Yes, all three of those guys have been on and off the field, especially as a young player at a position that is relatively up for grabs, more safety than I would say linebacker. Man, K'Von Wallace could be a starter. He could be a starter day one. If he goes out there and flashes in camp, shows that he's healthy, shows that he can move around, picks up a lot of what they're going to be doing in terms of two high safeties with Anthony Harris on the other side of him. Davion Taylor's in a tough spot due to there being so many linebackers on the team now that are really good. You went from nobody to a lot of players.
Because you're White, with Kobe Dean, and TJ Edwards, he's got to get over all three. That's tough.
And you look at the defensive front, they could be deploying a linebacker as a rush type of player, and you're going to put Hassan Reddick or a guy like Patrick Johnson in that situation over a guy like Davion Taylor. He's another person who has to come out there and have a healthy camp. Above everybody, though, it has to be Driscoll that I would say day one can go out there and start. Things didn't change when Driscoll was in the game, but when he got injured, Lou, we started to notice. When they had to bring Nate Herbig in there in those spot starts, you're like, this kid was actually pretty good for being a later pick out of Auburn who's played tackle guard.
We talked more about Prince Tega-Wanogo that year out of Auburn between the two Auburn kids they took. Yeah, Driscoll was a steal, I think, for what they got, man. Over the other two right now, he's been more valuable. And again, he has the benefit, though, of working under Stout in the unit he has. But I think you're right. I think it's Wallace. And right now, Marcus Epps is the clear favorite over him. He was, to me, maybe the most efficient safety you had last year on the field between him, McLeod, and Harris. But again, Wallace has a 4th round, status on him. The Eagles took him pretty high. I think they had higher expectations than people think. I mean, you've seen Josh Sweat, Avonte Maddox, Jack Driscoll, these 4th round picks create roles for themselves. And again, if his only competition is Epps, like Wallace was a really good football player and one of the best college defenses we've seen with that Clemson national title team. So yeah, if he stays healthy, it's a massive if, but I think Wallace, again, it feels more doable for him than Taylor. I can't see a path for Taylor now.
It's when you're driving down a road and you get to that dirt path and there's a trail that looks pretty bumpy. I would say K'Von has the smoothest path. It's going to be bumpy for Davion to get a majority of the snaps, especially with Kaiser White in there now. You grab Nakobe Dean. There's a lot of traffic at that position. Jack Driscoll, his route might be a little smoother. They do love Isaac Seumalo, though. That's the one thing that I keep going back to, is that personal affinity that Jeff Stoutland has for Isaac as a player.
Is Wallace the best odds? Like, if you're going to bet on one of the three, it might be K'Von.
You would have to say so, because if not, you realize that you missed out on that pick, because Anthony Harris is a guy who's a replacement level player.
Yeah, you should want Wallace should be. Yeah, he should be able to beat these guys out. You know what I mean? Like Wallace was PFF's, I think, top graded like slot defender for like a season and a half or 2 seasons. He was like, this isn't just some random prospect, right? I mean, like he was a good college football player. I want to see him on the field. I am very curious to see what he has.
And he's only really played a little bit under Jonathan Gannon. A majority of it was when Jim was here as the defensive coordinator. Now going into this year, you can sit back and say, okay, make or break it. This is it. You have to find out who you are as a player at this point in your career. And I think he's going to come in here in a scheme that fits him much better, hopefully with a fully healthy offseason to learn the ins and outs of the playbook. I think him and Marcus Epps could be your best option back there. I think Marcus is underrated at his position. The numbers are there to back it up. His numbers in coverage were surprisingly very, very good last year. Anthony Harris, I would like to see K'Von Wallace beat out. Who knows with Jonathan Gannon having him in Minnesota when he was there.
Yeah, I mean,
but out of all of them, I wouldn't be upset if Davion didn't play, because there's a lot of guys there. I wouldn't be upset if Driscoll lost it out. But K'Von, he has the lowest floor to crash through in terms of who to beat out.
No, 100%. It'll be interesting to see what happens. We've got OTAs this month, training camp in, a little over a month, but it's all coming very soon. We got you covered all day, every day, Monday through Friday, right here on your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, Locked On Eagles. Be sure to follow us on all podcast platforms for a show every day, video form as well on YouTube, and hit us up on Twitter at Locked On Birds, at GC24_football, and at DiBiase LOE. Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Make sure your second listen is the Locked On NFL podcast. All the news across the league in under 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your shows. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase signing off. We'll see you tomorrow. As always, thank you for downloading. Thank you for watching and listening, and let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.